The second branch of the Mabinogi. Bendigeidfran, son of Lear, was crowned king over this island and invested with the crown of London. One afternoon he was in Harlech in Ardithwy at one of his courts. He was sitting on the rock of Harlech above the sea when his brother Manawyddan, son of Lear, and his two brothers on his mother's side, Nisian and Efnisian, and noblemen too, as was appropriate around a king. His brothers on his mother's side were the sons of Euroswydd by his own mother Penarvin, daughter of Beli, son of Minogon. One of these was a good lad. He could make peace between two armies when they were most enraged. That was Nisian. The other had caused two of the most loving brothers to fight. As they were sitting there, they could see 13 ships coming from the south of Ireland, heading towards them easily and swiftly, the wind behind them, and they were approaching with speed. "I can see ships over there coming boldly towards the shore," said the king. "Tell the men of the court to put on their armour and go and find out what their intentions are." The men armed themselves and went down to meet them. Having seen the ships at close quarters, the men were certain that they had never seen ships in a more perfect condition than these, with their fair, beautiful, exquisite banners of brocaded silk. Suddenly one of the ships overtook the others, and they saw a shield being raised above the ship's deck, with the point of the shield upwards as a sign of peace. The king's men approached them so that they were within speaking distance. The others put out boats and approached the shore and greeted the king. The king could hear them from where he was seated on the high rock above their heads. "May God prosper you," he said, "and welcome. Whose are these ships, and who is their chief?" "Lord," they said, "Matholwch, king of Ireland, is here, and these are his ships." "What does he want?" said the king. "Does he want to come ashore?" "No, Lord," they said, "unless you grant him his request. He has business with you." "What sort of request does he have?" said the king. "He wishes to unite your two families, Lord," they said. "He has come to ask for Branwen, daughter of Lear, and if you agree, he wishes to join together the island of the mighty and Ireland, so that they might be stronger." "Very well," he said. "Let him come ashore, and we will take advice on the matter." That answer was taken to Matholwch. "I will go gladly," he said. He came ashore and was made welcome, and there was a great crowd in the court that night, what with Matholwch's retinue and that of the court. First thing the next day they took counsel. They decided to give Branwen to Matholwch. She was one of the 3 chief maidens of this island. She was the most beautiful girl in the world. They set a date for Matholwch to sleep with her at Aberfrau, and they left Harlech. They all set off for Aberfrau, Matholwch and his retinue in the ships, Bendigeidfran and his own retinue overland, until they came to Aberfrau. There the feast began, and they sat down. This is how they sat: the king of the island of the mighty, with Manawyddan, son of Lear, on one side, and Matholwch on the other, with Branwen, daughter of Lear, next to him. They were not in a house, but in tents. Bendigeidfran had never been able to fit inside any house. They began the celebration and continued to carouse and to converse. When they thought it was better to sleep than continue carousing, they went to sleep. And that night Matholwch slept with Branwen. The next day everyone in the court got up, and the officers began to discuss the billeting of the horses and grooms, and they billeted them in every region as far as the sea. Then one day Efnisian, the quarrelsome man, of whom we spoke above, happened to come across the lodgings of Matholwch's horses, and he asked whose horses they were. "These are the horses of Matholwch, king of Ireland," they said. "What are they doing here?" he said. "The king of Ireland is here, and he has slept with Branwen, your sister, and these are his horses." "Is that what they've done with such a fine maiden, and my sister at that, given her away without my permission? They could not have insulted me more," he said. Then he went for the horses, and cut their lips to the teeth, and their ears down to their heads, and their tails to their backs, and where he could get a grip on the eyelids he cut them to the bone, and in that way he maimed the horses, so that they were no good for anything. The news reached Matholwch. He was told how his horses had been maimed and spoiled so that they were no good for anything. "Well, Lord," said one, "you have been insulted, and it was done deliberately." "God knows, but I find it strange, if they wanted to insult me, that they should have first given me such a fine maiden of such high rank, so beloved by her family." "Lord," said another, "it's perfectly clear. There is nothing for you to do but return to your ships." So Matholwch made for his ships. The news reached Bendigeidfran that Matholwch was leaving the court, without asking, without permission. Messengers went to ask him why he was going. The messengers who went were Iddig, son of Anarog, and Havaith here. Those men caught up with him and asked him what was his intention and why he was leaving. "God knows," he said, "if I had known, I would not have come here. I've been completely insulted. No one has ever been on a worse expedition than this one, and a strange thing has happened to me." "What is that?" they said. "I was given Branwen, daughter of Llŷr, one of the 3 chief maidens of this island, and daughter to a king of the island of the mighty, and I slept with her, but after that I was insulted, and I find it strange that the insult was not done before such an excellent maiden as that was given to me." "God knows, Lord, that insult was not done to you with the approval of the one who rules the court," they said, "nor any one of his council, and although you consider it a disgrace, this insult, and deception is worse for Bendigeidfran than it is for you." "Yes," he said, "perhaps so, but yet Bendigeidfran cannot undo the insult just because of that." The men returned with that answer to Bendigeidfran and told him what Matholwch had said. "Well," said Bendigeidfran, "it is no good if he goes away angry, and we cannot allow it." "We agree, Lord," they said. "Send messengers after him again." "I will," he said. "Arise, Manawyddan, son of Llŷr, and Havaith Llŷr, and Unig Clay Asguid, and go after him," he said. "And tell him that he shall have a sound horse for each one that was maimed, and also he shall have as his honour price a rod of silver as thick as his little finger and as tall as himself, and a plate of gold as broad as his face, and tell him what sort of man did this, and how it was done against my will, and that a brother on my mother's side did it, and it is not easy for me either to kill him or destroy him. Let Matholwch come and see me," he said, "and I will make peace on whatever terms he wishes." The messengers went after Matholwch and repeated these words in a friendly manner, and he listened to them. "Men," he said, "we will take counsel." He took counsel. They decided that, were they to refuse the offer, that they would be more likely to get further shame than further compensation. So Matholwch made up his mind to accept. They came to the court in peace. The tents and pavilions were arranged as if they were laying out a hall, and they went to eat. And as they had sat at the beginning of the feast, so they sat now. Bendigeidfran and Matholwch began to converse, but it seemed to Bendigeidfran that Matholwch's conversation was lifeless and sad, whereas he had always been cheerful before that. And he thought that the chieftain was downhearted because of how little compensation he had received for the wrong done to him. "Sir," said Bendigeidfran, "your conversation is not as good as it was the other night, and if it's because you feel your compensation is too little, I shall add to it as you wish, and tomorrow your horses shall be given to you." "Lord," he said, "may God repay you." "I will increase your compensation too," said Bendigeidfran. "I will give you a cauldron, and the property of the cauldron is that if you throw into it one of your men who is killed today, then by tomorrow he will be as good as ever, except that he will not be able to speak." Matholwch thanked him for that, and was extremely happy on account of the cauldron. The next day his horses were handed over to him, so long as there were tame horses to give. From there Matholwch was taken to another commot, and foals were handed over to him, until his payment was complete. And for that reason the commot was called Talabolion from then on. The second night they sat together. "Lord," said Matholwch, "where did you get the cauldron that you gave me?" "I got it from a man who had been in your country," said Bendigeidfran, "and for all I know that is where he found it." "Who was he?" he said. "Llasach Leis Gyfnewydd," he said, "and he came here from Ireland, with Cymidai Cymainfol, his wife. and they escaped from the iron house in Ireland when it was made white hot around them, and they fled from Ireland. I'm surprised that you know nothing about it." "I do, Lord," he said, "and I will tell you as much as I know. I was hunting in Ireland one day on top of a mound overlooking a lake called the Lake of the Cauldron, and I saw a large man with yellow-red hair coming out of the lake with a cauldron on his back. He was a huge, monstrous man too, with an evil, ugly look about him, and a woman followed him. And if he was large, the woman was twice his size, and they came up to me and greeted me. 'Well,' I said, 'how are things going with you?' 'It's like this, Lord,' said the man. 'In a month and a fortnight this woman will conceive, and the boy who is then born of that pregnancy in a month and a fortnight will be a fully armed warrior.' I took them in to maintain them. They were with me for a year. During that year no one objected to them, but from then on people resented them. And before the end of the 4th month of the 2nd year, they were causing people to hate and loathe them throughout the land, insulting, harassing, and tormenting noble men and women. From then on, my people rose against me to ask me to get rid of them, and gave me a choice, either my kingdom or these people. I left it to the council of my country to decide what should be done about them. They would not go of their own free will. They did not have to go against their will because of their ability to fight. And then, in this dilemma, it was decided to build a chamber completely of iron. And when the chamber was ready, all the smiths in Ireland and all those who owned tongs and hammers were summoned there, and charcoal was piled up on the top of the chamber. And the woman and her husband and her children were served with plenty of food and drink, and when it was clear that they were drunk, the smiths began to set fire to the charcoal around the chamber, and blew the bellows that had been placed around the house, each man with 2 bellows, and they began to blow the bellows until the house was white hot around them. And then the family took counsel in the middle of the chamber, and the husband waited until the iron wall was white, and because of the great heat he charged at the wall with his shoulder and broke out through it, with his wife following, and only he and his wife escaped. 'After that, Lord,' said Matholwch to Bendigeid-Fran, 'I suppose he came over to you.' 'He did indeed,' said Bendigeid-Fran, 'and he gave the cauldron to me.' 'What sort of welcome did you give them, Lord?' 'I dispersed them throughout the land, and they are numerous and prosper everywhere, and strengthen whatever place they happen to be in with the best men and weapons anyone has seen.' That night they continued to talk and sing and carouse as long as it pleased them. When they realised it was better to sleep than to sit up longer, they went to sleep, and so they enjoyed the feast. When it finished, Matholwch, together with Branwen, set out for Ireland. They set out for Mabinogi in their 13 ships and came to Ireland. In Ireland they received a great welcome. Not one man of rank or noblewoman in Ireland came to visit Branwen to whom she did not give either a brooch or a ring or a treasured royal jewel, and it was remarkable to see such things leaving the court. Furthermore, she gained renown that year and flourished with honour and companions. Meanwhile, she became pregnant. After the appropriate time had passed, she gave birth to a boy. They named him Gwern, son of Matholwch. The boy was put out to be fostered to the very best place for men in Ireland. Then, in the 2nd year, there was a murmuring of dissatisfaction in Ireland because of the insult that Matholwch had received in Wales, and the disgrace he had suffered regarding his horses. His foster brothers and the men closest to him taunted him with it quite openly. And there was such an uproar in Ireland that there was no peace for Matholwch until he avenged the insult. They took revenge by sending Branwen from her husband's chamber and forcing her to cook for the court, and they had the butcher come to her every day after he had chopped up meat and give her a box on the ear, and that is how her punishment was carried out. 'Now, Lord,' said his men to Matholwch, 'set an embargo on the ships and the rowing boats and the coracles, so that no one may go to Wales. And whoever comes here from Wales, imprison them, and do not let them return in case they find out what is happening.' They agreed on that. This continued for not less than 3 years. In the meantime, Branwen reared a starling at the end of her kneading trough, and taught it to speak, and told the bird what kind of man her brother was. And she brought a letter telling of her punishment and dishonour. The letter was tied to the base of the bird's wings, and it was sent to Wales. And the bird came to this island. It found Bendigeid-Fran in Caer Saint in Arafon, where he was at a council of his one day. The bird alighted on his shoulder and ruffled its feathers until the letter was discovered, and they realised that the bird had been reared among people. Then the letter was taken and examined. When it was read, Bendigeid-Fran grieved to hear how Branwen was being punished, and there and then he sent messengers to muster the entire island. Then he had the full levy of 154 districts come to him, and he complained personally to them of his sister's punishment. Then he took counsel. They agreed to set out for Ireland and leave 7 men behind as leaders, together with 7 horsemen, and Caradog, son of Bran, in command. Those men were left in Edairnion, and because of that, the name Saith Machog was given to the township. The 7 men were Caradog, son of Bran, and Havaid Hir, and Unigle Asgoith, and Iddig, son of Anarog Vachtgurn, and Fodor, son of Ethelfuch, and Ulach Minesgurn, and Chlasha, son of Chlasa Chlaisgungoid, and Pendaran, David. Then a young lad was with them. Those 7 stayed behind as 7 stewards to look after this island, and Caradog, son of Bran, was their chief steward. Bendigeid-Fran and the army we mentioned sailed towards Ireland, and the sea was not wide then. Bendigeid-Fran waded across. There were only 2 rivers, called the Chlí and the Achan. Later the sea spread out when it flooded the kingdoms. But Bendigeid-Fran walked, carrying all the stringed instruments on his own back, and made for Ireland's shore. Matholwch's swineherds were on the seashore one day, busy with their pigs, and because of what they saw on the sea, they went to Matholwch. "Lord," they said, "greetings. May God prosper you," he said, "and do you have any news?" "Lord," they said, "we have extraordinary news. We have seen a forest on the sea, where we never before saw a single tree." "That's strange," he said. "Could you see anything else?" "Yes, Lord," they said. "We could see a huge mountain beside the forest, and it was moving, and there was a very high ridge on the mountain, and a lake on each side of the ridge, and the forest and the mountain, and all of it was moving." "Well," said Matholwch, "there is no one here who would know anything about that, unless Branwen knows something. Go and ask her." Messengers went to Branwen. "Lady," they said, "what do you think it is?" "I am no lady," she said. "I know what it is. The men of the island of the mighty coming over, having heard of my punishment and dishonour." "What is the forest they saw in the sea?" they said. "Masts of ships and yardarms," she said. "Oh," they said. "What was the mountain they saw alongside the ships?" "That was Bendigeid-Fran, my brother, wading across," she said. "There was no ship big enough for him." "What was the very high ridge and the lake on each side of the ridge?" "That was him looking at this island," she said. "He is angry. The 2 lakes on either side of the ridge are his 2 eyes on each side of his nose." Then they quickly mustered all the fighting men of Ireland and of the coastal regions and took counsel. "Lord," said his men to Matholwch, "the only advice is to retreat across the Liffey," a river in Ireland, "and put the Liffey between you and him, and then destroy the bridge that crosses the river. There are lodestones on the riverbed. Neither ships nor vessels can sail across." They retreated over the river and destroyed the bridge. Bendigeid-Fran landed with his feet and approached the river bank. "Lord," said his noblemen, "you know the strange thing about the river. No one can sail across it, nor is there a bridge. What should we do for a bridge?" they said. "Nothing, except that he who is a leader, let him be a bridge," said Bendigeid-Fran. "I will be a bridge," he said. This was the first time that saying was uttered, and it is still used as a proverb. Then, after Bendigeid-Fran had lain down across the river, Hurdles were placed on him, and his men walked on top of him to the other side. Then, as soon as he got up, Matholwch's messengers approached him and greeted him, and addressed him on behalf of Matholwch, his kinsman, who, they said, wished nothing but good to come Bendigeidfran's way. And Matholwch is giving the kingship of Ireland to Gwern, son of Matholwch, your nephew, your sister's son, and would invest him in your presence to make up for the injustice and injury that was done to Branwen, and make provision for Matholwch wherever you like, either here or in the island of the mighty. Well, said Bendigeidfran, if I myself cannot have the kingship, perhaps I should take advice regarding your message, but until a better response comes, you will get no answer from me. Very well, they said, we will bring you the best response we can get. Wait for our message. I will if you return quickly, he said. The messengers set off and went to Matholwch. Lord, they said, prepare a better response for Bendigeidfran. He would not listen at all to the one we took him. My men, said Matholwch, what is your advice? Lord, they said, there is only one thing to do. He has never been able to fit inside a house, they said. Build a house in his honour, so that there is room for him and the men of the island of the mighty in one half of the house, and for you and your troops in the other. And place your kingship at his disposal, and pay homage to him. And because of the honour in building the house, for he has never had one into which he could fit, he will make peace with you. The messengers took the offer to Bendigeidfran, and he took advice. He decided to accept, and that was all done on Branwen's advice, because she feared that the country would be laid waste. The terms of peace were arranged, and the house was built large and spacious. But the Irish had a cunning plan. They placed a peg on either side of each column of the 100 columns in the house, and hung a hide bag on each peg with an armed man in each one of them. Efnisien entered the house ahead of the troops of the island of the mighty, and cast fierce, ruthless glances around the house. He caught sight of the hide bags along the pillars. What is in this bag? He said to one of the Irishmen. Flour, friend, he answered. Efnisien prodded the bag until he found the man's head, and he squeezed the head until he could feel his fingers sinking into the brain through the bone. He left that one and put his hand on another bag, and asked, What have we here? Flour, friend, said the Irishman. Efnisien played the same game with each of them, so that not a man was left alive of the entire 200, apart from one. And he came to that one and asked, What have we here? Flour, friend, said the Irishman. Efnisien prodded the bag until he found the man's head, and just as he had squeezed the heads of the others, so he squeezed this one. He could feel armour on the head of this one. He did not let him go until he had killed him. And then he sang an englyn. There is in this bag a different kind of flour, champions, warriors, attackers in battle, against fighters prepared for combat. Then the troops entered the house. The men of the island of Ireland entered the house on the one side, and the men of the island of the mighty on the other. As soon as they sat down, they were reconciled, and the boy was invested with the kingship. Then, when peace had been made, Bendigeidfran called the boy to him. The boy went from Bendigeidfran to Manawyddan, and everyone who saw him loved him. From Manawyddan, Nisian, son of Euroswydd, called the boy to him. The boy went to him graciously. Why does my nephew, my sister's son, not come to me? Said Efnisien. Even if he were not king of Ireland, I would still like to make friends with the boy. Let him go gladly, said Bendigeidfran. The boy went to him cheerfully. I confess to God, said Efnisien to himself, the outrage I shall now commit is one the household will never expect. And he gets up and takes the boy by the feet, and immediately, before anyone in the house can lay a hand on him, he hurls the boy head first into the fire. When Branwen sees her son burning in the fire, she tries to jump into the fire from where she is sitting between her two brothers. But Bendigeidfran seizes her with one hand and seizes his shield with the other. Then everyone in the house leaps up, and that was the greatest uproar ever by a crowd in one house, as each one took up arms. Then Morddwydd Tychlon said, Hounds of Gwern, beware of Morddwydd Tirchlion. As each went for his weapons, Bendigeidfran held Branwen between his shield and his shoulder. The Irish began to kindle a fire under the cauldron of rebirth. Then they threw the corpses into the cauldron until it was full, and they would get up the next morning fighting as well as before, except they could not talk. When Efnisien saw the corpses and no room anywhere for the men of the island of the mighty, he said to himself, "Oh God," he said, "woe is me that I'm the cause of this mountain of the men of the island of mighty, and shame on me," he said, "unless I try to save them from this." He creeps in among the corpses of the Irish, and 2 bare-backed Irishmen come up to him and throw him into the cauldron as if he were an Irishman. He stretches himself out in the cauldron so that the cauldron breaks into 4 pieces, and his own heart breaks too. And because of that, such victory as there was went to the men of the island of the mighty. There was no real victory, except that 7 men escaped, and Bendigeidfran was wounded in the foot with a poisoned spear. The 7 men who escaped were Pryderi, Manawyddon, Glyphiai, son of Taran, Taliesin, Unog, Grithiau, son of Muriel, and Haelin, son of Gwynhen. Then Bendigeidfran ordered his head to be cut off. "And take my head," he said, "and carry it to the Gwynfryn in London, and bury it with its face towards France. And it will take you a long time. You will feast in Harlech for 7 years with the birds of Rhiannon singing to you. And you will find the head to be as good company as it ever was when it was on me. And you will stay for 80 years in Gwales in Penfro. And so long as you do not open the door towards Aberhenfellen, facing Cornwall, you can remain there, and the head will not decay. But as soon as you open that door, you can stay no longer. Make for London to bury the head, and now set off across the sea." Then his head was cut off, and they set out across the sea with the head, those 7 men, and Branwen as the 8th. They came ashore at Aberallow in Talabolion, and then they sat down and rested. She looked at Ireland and at the island of the mighty, what she could see of them. "O Son of God," said she, "woe that I was ever born. 2 good islands have been laid waste because of me." She gives a mighty sigh, and with that her heart breaks. And they make a 4-sided grave for her, and bury her there on the banks of the Allow. Then the 7 men journeyed towards Harlech, carrying the head. As they were travelling, they met a company of men and women. "Do you have any news?" said Manawyddon. "No," they said, "except that Caswallon, son of Beli, has overrun the island of the mighty and is crowned king in London." "What happened to Caradog, son of Bran, and the 7 men who were left with him on the island?" they said. "Caswallon attacked them, and 6 men were killed, and Caradog's heart broke from bewilderment at seeing the sword kill his men and not knowing who killed them. Caswallon had put on a magic cloak so that no one could see him killing the men. They could only see the sword. Caswallon did not want to kill Caradog. He was his nephew, his cousin's son, and he was one of the 3 people who broke their hearts from sorrow. Pendarin Dyfed, who was a young lad with the 7 men, escaped to the woods, they said. Then they went to Harlech and sat down and were regaled with food and drink. As soon as they began to eat and drink, 3 birds came and began to sing them a song, and all the songs that they had heard before were harsh compared to that one. They had to gaze far out over the sea to catch sight of the birds, yet their song was as clear as if the birds were there with them. And they feasted for 7 years. At the end of the 7th year, they set out for Gwales in Penfro. There was a pleasant royal dwelling for them there, above the sea, and there was a large hall, and they went to the hall. They could see 2 doors open. The 3rd door was closed, the one facing Cornwall. "See over there," said Manawyddon. "The door we must not open." That night they stayed there contented and lacking nothing, and of all the sorrow they had themselves seen and suffered, they remembered none of it, nor of any grief in the world. And there they spent 80 years, so that they were not aware of ever having spent a more pleasurable or more delightful time. It was no more unpleasant than when they first arrived, nor could anyone tell by looking at the other that he had aged in that time. Having the head there was no more unpleasant than when Bendigeid Bran had been alive with them. Because of those 80 years, this was called the Assembly of the Noble Head. The one which went to Ireland was the Assembly of Branwen and Matholwch. One day, Hylin, son of Gwyn, said, "Shame on my beard unless I open the door to find out if what they say about it is true." He opened the door and looked at Cornwall and at Aberhenfellen, and when he looked, every loss that they had suffered, and every kinsman and companion that they had lost, and every ill that had befallen them, was as clear as if they had encountered it in that very place, and most of all concerning their Lord. And from that moment they could not rest, but made for London with the head. Although the road was long, they came at last to London, and buried the head on the Gwynfryn, and that was one of the 3 fortunate concealments when it was concealed, and one of the 3 unfortunate disclosures when it was disclosed. For no oppression would ever come across the sea to this island while the head was in that hiding place. And that is how the story goes. Their tale is called The Men Who Set Out from Ireland. In Ireland, no one was left alive except for 5 pregnant women in a cave in the wilds of Ireland. Those 5 women, at exactly the same time, gave birth to 5 sons. And they reared those 5 sons until they were big lads. And their thoughts turned to women, and they lusted after them. Then each lad slept promiscuously with each other's mother, and lived in the land and ruled it, and divided it between the 5 of them. And the 5 provinces of Ireland still reflect that division. And they searched the country where battles had taken place, and found gold and silver until they grew wealthy. And that is how this branch of the Mabinogi ends, concerning the blow to Branwen, which was one of the 3 unfortunate blows in this island, and the assembly of Bran, when the army of 154 districts went to Ireland to avenge the blow to Branwen, and the feasting in Harlech for 7 years, and the singing of the birds of Rhiannon, and the assembly of the head for 80 years.